Leticia Landa, welcome to San Francisco Revival.
Thank you.
So you are the executive director of La Cocina. La Cocina incubates small food businesses with women of color, immigrant women, BIPOC-led. I want to get more into what that process looks like, what it takes to be someone that is being a La Cocina incubated business, to having a brick and mortar. But before we go into that, I want to acknowledge the space we're in. We are at Reem's in the Mission. We are on 25th and Mission. This is a business that was first incubated at La Cocina. So Leticia, how does it feel to be in this space, to be in a brick and mortar, to be in a restaurant, culinary community space that you and your organization help bring off the ground?
It's interesting to hear that question, and really, I'm always kind of overwhelmed when I walk into a La Cocina graduate, in a good way. Like, just to know how much work has gone into every single thing about any space that I walk into, any restaurant really, but especially the ones where I've seen them kind of go from someone's idea in their head, right? Reem's dream that she came and applied with, and then to like see it actualized, it's a really cool thing. And even though I've actually worked around the corner, La Cocina's office is on 25th, or between 25th and 26th on Folsom, and I've worked at La Cocina for almost 18 years. So I have walked from the BART station down this street over to my office for 18 years, and I've seen incredible amounts of change in that time. I used to come here when it was Mission Pie, and now it's Reem's. And I just think that, small food businesses are such a meaningful part of any community, but especially, I think my community and my commute. I ate many a slices of pie here, and I eat many a chocolate chip cookie here. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember the old Mission Pie days. I lived down on 25th and Bryant for a number of years, so this is also just like home.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, this place being a business, I think it also goes beyond being a business itself, right? Like, it opens pathways to different cultures. It's jobs for local community members. It's part of the community fabric in the Mission. Is there a moment where you realized in your 18 years that, this is deeper than food, that it's about people, it's about power?
Yeah, I would say that's actually why I joined, is that I think I've always known that this is just a means to an end, and that end is like justice, is really the kind of world, the kind of society that I think we all want to see, and that I certainly have been fighting for, right, for so long. Food businesses are, I think, unique in their ability to create the kind of world that we want to live in, because they bring people together. There's so much that can be shared over food in terms of memory, lineage, history. And so much of that, I think, is really key to like the human experience and to our ability to connect with each other as
absolutely
people from all over the place, right, who have come here. And so I think, that is really why I joined La Cocina, is because I saw a social justice organization doing something that was really important in terms of the racial wealth gap and in terms of, city building and place making, and that was doing it through food. And I love cooking. I love eating. And so what a kind of magical way to unlock and to approach this kind of bigger work.
Yeah, definitely. Talking a bit about that process that La Cocina does to incubate businesses. As I mentioned before, it's immigrant women, BIPOC-led, and you all graduate about 8 to 10 businesses per year. Could you maybe walk us through what that incubation process looks like from, let's say, day one to graduation? Like, what kind of supports do you all provide, and what's expected if you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can do that kind of in theory, or I can maybe just do that using Reem as an example.
Well, that'd be wonderful.
Because I really feel like incubation, people are often like, what does that mean? An incubator is kind of a little place for like chicken eggs to hatch, I think, So it's a little bit confusing, or can be. But really the idea of having a kitchen incubator is to create a space where people get started. So that's why we're using that term, right? Kind of that hatching and kind of initial growth, so that there is kind of like a warm, safe community for someone to get going in, and then to be able to kind of go off and do their own thing. So using Reem as an example, Reem is an amazing person who has all different kinds of things in her background, including community organizing. She did political activism. And then, she also really always loved baking and, her own Middle Eastern heritage. Grew up around amazing food and a lot of breads. And so she took a job at Arizmendi, which is a cooperative bakery, and did that kind of with the idea that maybe someday she would want to start a bakery, right? So what's the best way to kind of figure out whether or not you want to be a food business owner is often to like get a job in the food industry and sort of see what it's like. So actually a huge percentage of the people who start their businesses at La Cocina are restaurant workers, right? Are people who worked in restaurants and who were like, I could do this for myself. I want to do this for myself. And so that's kind of a typical journey. And so Reem was at Arizmendi. She started dreaming about her own take, right, on a bakery that would create the kinds of breads that she grew up with and, her heritage. And I don't exactly remember how she heard about La Cocina, but she knew about La Cocina. So she came to one of our info sessions. She, put together an application. That application is actually, we require a business plan. So it's a kind of a second step, right? Like you've maybe already taken a business planning class from one of our partner organizations, and you're really feeling like, okay, I'm ready. Like I know I've got experience, right? She had been doing baking for a while. She knew that she wanted to be a food business owner, and I've got this plan. I can sort of see a model for it. So then, apply it to our program. And we read applications really carefully. We consider so many different factors in terms of, is this business going to be able to make it, right? Like there's such a competitive food industry here. We really want to make sure people are sort of set up for success. And we do interviews, we taste people's food. We're really making sure that they have like the entrepreneurial spirit required. It's really hard work. It's a lot of effort to start a food business. And, so then Reem had all those things. And in spades. Like she's just an incredible example, I think, of the kind of business that we look for. And our incubator is actually, it's like a 2-stage kind of process. So when someone comes into incubation, they have, a plan, but then we really spend the first like 6 to 8 months on all the foundations of the business. So we have a curriculum, it's on mini MBA in terms of like getting your permits, like doing the logo design, really thinking about your target market, getting all those recipes into weights, all the kind of nuts and bolts and basics around what do you need to do to make this business real. And at the end of that time period, we do kind of a transition interview, another interview where you're like, okay, now I've got all these things figured out. I've done all the basics. I've gotten all my foundations. Now I'm ready for sales. And so in Reem's case, that was, farmers markets. So when she began, she started selling at different markets around town. And selling at farmers markets is a huge amount of work. You've got to have all the equipment. You've got to load it into a van. You've got to show up at 6 a.m. You got to get everything up and running. But it is like a really important kind of pre-restaurant step in the sense of, if you don't just have enough money to like right off the bat go take all the risks, sign a lease, build out a space, you've got to kind of make that happen incrementally. And so we work with businesses to do special events, catering, sell at farmers markets, really get their name out there, really start to grow their business, create sales, have the opportunity to practice and grow, so that then, after a few years, they're then like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Now I'm feeling ready to sign a lease. Now I'm feeling ready to kind of have my own brick and mortar. So in Reem's case, her first brick and mortar space was actually in Fruitvale in Oakland. So she, graduated out of La Cocina's incubator program into her first brick and mortar space in Fruitvale, right across from the BART station. And, we support people with all of the different pieces. It's almost like you have another like intensive, like you do when you first start, around the operations in a new space, building it out, getting the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't just say, okay, we're an incubator, your business started, now you've graduated, you're good. We we remain in community, we remain in partnership, and we really want to continue to see our businesses be successful. We don't only want those businesses to launch, we want them to endure, right? And so to me, I think Reem is also another really good example of how our program works, in the sense that she was in Fruitvale, she was growing, she had great sales, so she thought, okay, I'm ready to expand to San Francisco. We worked with her again, on lease negotiations and thinking about this space. And, she got it up and ready and open. I think it was like 1 or 2 weeks before the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So, to have a business that's able to endure, to make those hard decisions of closing the Fruitvale location, keeping this location, kind of pivoting during the pandemic, doing more frozen goods, baked goods, but she's selling wholesale. Those are all questions that we're kind of still in conversation with our graduates around, because we really want to see the businesses continue to succeed. So, we have now, we have incredible experienced staff members who have been in the food industry for a long time, who serve as advisors for the businesses that are in our program. And then we also have a really awesome network of volunteers and just industry folks who I think are so generous and willing to connect with, mentor, answer questions for the businesses that are in our program. And yeah, I think just to kind of give that as an example, right? Now Reem is here. She's been selling here for years and looking again to re-expand back out to Oakland with another bakery space in the East Bay. So, it's just an example. And there are so many more around the Bay Area. There's like another restaurant on Mission Street here at Buen Comer that started out of La Cocina's program. Like so many we could talk about. But just to kind of show you how the incubator works through that arc.
Yeah. How much is the Reem's example indicative of the experiences of the graduates? Like, are a majority of the graduates ending up at brick and mortar? Are they ended up in different kind of places?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say Reem is typical in the sense that the majority of the businesses that we're working with come in with an idea and they want to have a restaurant. We do have some businesses that come in and they have a product like a salsa or a baked good or a cookie or chocolate, and they're really hoping to have like a packaged food business. But it's sort of varied over the years, maybe like 1/3, 2/3, or 1/4, 3/4 in terms of, packaged food goods versus restaurant desires. We do have some people who are like really wanting to be caterers, who don't have that desire for like a brick and mortar space and who continue to work out of shared use kitchens. That's like another example of the kind of business we're working with. But yeah, the majority of people are looking for restaurant spaces. I will say, Reem is particularly successful in the sense that she's been able to open multiple locations. But, Onagili is one of our grads and they now have 6 locations. So it's not like an outlier. We do have many people who are still like in their first location, having exited from the program. But one of the things that I feel proudest of in terms of our incubator program is that 70% of the businesses that have come into our incubator program are still in business 10 years later. And that's a really unusual statistic, I think, for any kind of business incubation program. And it's particularly unusual in the food industry where there is such high turnover. But I think it really speaks to the depth of the connection that we feel with these businesses and also the community that they build with each other and the community of San Franciscans, right? And of like people who want to eat with purpose, with, intention, who support these businesses, who supported them through the pandemic, who ensured that all of the businesses made it through the pandemic, and who continue to really care deeply about who they're getting their food from.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many commercial spaces that you see that there's like a revolving restaurant, right? That comes in, comes out. And it's hard to find long-term success. So that 70% number for 10 years, I think is definitely really remarkable in that work. So from beginning your program to graduation, talked a bit about the process. Where have you seen where folks maybe find the hardest challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's challenges all along the way. I think that there are a lot of challenges right at first because no one knows you. No one knows your food. No one, has experienced it before, especially when we're talking about newer products or, countries whose foods are like not as well represented here. You kind of have to find a market for what it is that you're making. And I think that that's kind of a challenging place kind of just at first, right? Like getting your feet. And then I think the other big step where it feels scary, of course, is that the risk on moving out of a shared use space and into your own space, because that's when you're taking on more financial risk. Most people are doing that by taking out loans. how do you pick what neighborhood you want to be in? I mean, there's just so many different questions that go into that I think are really challenging. But I was like, kind of those are like the two inflection points. But along the way, I mean, gosh, like your van breaks down and you're a farmer's market business. Like that's a huge challenge, the employee that you had from the beginning who knows all your recipes and is like, really the heart and soul of your operations, like their kid gets sick and they can't work with you anymore. There's so many different reasons why food businesses are challenging, or like, tariffs are imposed on the spice that you use. And then all of a sudden you've got to increase your prices by, 20, 30% from one day to the next. Like it's kind of endless actually in terms of the challenges. And I think often people are like, why are you trying to do this through food, right? Like social change, like, reducing the racial wealth gap, like it's hard enough. Like, why did you pick such a hard industry? And I mean, for me, the answer is that like, it's the passion that people have for it, like I just really feel like there's so much to be said for giving someone an opportunity to do what they know how to do best. And like food people are like food entrepreneurs, like they have to share their food with the world, like it's kind of like this compulsion that drives people. And so to be able to resource that energy, I think is really important, even though it's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, like the people use the term, we're breaking bread together, right? Like sometimes it's figurative, you're in a meeting, or really it's that process of doing that with other people is part of what social change is, right? Like food is so fundamental to, just living in life, right? Like, so there's that, but even like it's the connections we just might find, right? Like you take a bite, oh, this tastes like something that I know. Then the person who you're with, you find a connection that's beyond the constraints of, a meeting, an agenda, self-interest, right? Like if there's good food in front of you, your self-interest is the food, right? And eating that, and, people's inhibitions come down, their anxieties, angers, frustrations come down. You can't be mad with a bunch of good food on your plate and in your mouth. So it's a difficult industry, right? But I think what food is, what it can be, what it should be to people, it makes almost the most sense.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult industry, but it's also like such a joyful one, and it's such a human one, and it's such a connected one. And I think that like that is what makes it feel really worthwhile.
Yeah.
It makes it feel worthwhile despite, because of, et cetera, like those challenges.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like for a place like Reem's, and honestly any other social justice, community-based food business, the Mission District is it's a perfect place in San Francisco for a business like that to get started, but also to get supported, right? Like there's a lot of people that I know in the neighborhood that, quite frankly, don't go to a lot of the newer restaurants in the neighborhood because they are associated with gentrification, right? Part of it's the prices, part of it's the business owners themselves, maybe not working well with the existing community that's there. And when there's a neighborhood business that's run by a family, run by people, that word gets out, and that place gets supported by individuals, by the nonprofit organizations, the community organizations that exist in the neighborhood, right? We order food from certain places because we know we're supporting more than just what gets put on the plate as well, right? Like you're supporting that community that's there and all the branches that kind of stem out of it.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
So,
and actually, it's interesting to hear you say that, like kind of the ripple effect, because, for 2025 was La Cocina's 20th anniversary. And then we were kind of all sitting around thinking like, what are we going to do for 2026? Like, what's kind of the next thing? And we've really been thinking so much about like the ripple effect, the butterfly effect, but like something so small as, for example, choosing to eat lunch at a small, wonderful local business such as this one, instead of, and I'm just going to throw them under a bus because they're so close by, going to McDonald's.
We can throw McDonald's under
right?
the bus. It's
like,
okay.
They're 1 block away from each other. You make the choice. Walk one further block from BART. It means so much. Like those ripples into the jobs that are created, the way that Reem is sourcing, the farmers that, are putting these beautiful, products, pulling them out of the field, bringing them, like, there's just it's like an intangible amount. I mean, I feel like it'd be such a cool visual, right? Of all of the different ways in which a small local food business is touching all of these different systems, people systems, food systems, the environment, water, like all the things. And it's like, as an eater, in addition to the fact they're going to get something even like more delicious, homemade, thoughtful, you're also really, it makes a difference. Like, it has an impact. And I don't, not to get out of how hard that is, right? Because it does cost more to eat here than it does at McDonald's. And that's real, but I do know that for many people, it is possible to spend their money in that way and to kind of align the way that you're eating and purchasing things with your values. It takes a little more work, takes a little more effort, but I do think that it has like such a broad effect, and it's such an important thing that we can all do as people, as eaters.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So you're talking about La Cocina celebrating its 20 years. I want to go a little bit, maybe not before that, but just in the early stages, before you came to La Cocina, where you were at university studying anthropology. How did that lead you to moving across the country? You were studying at Harvard at the time in Boston. Cambridge.
Same thing.
Is it the same thing?
I mean, it's technically a suburb, but I feel like it's all.
You were studying in the Boston metro area. Yeah. Let's say that. Like, how did you decide to be there, leave, to come to San Francisco, to be the third staffer at La Cocina? Like, did some of that academic background influence the way you might think about food, migration, community, and maybe led you over here? Or
yeah, that's such a good question, and one I've reflected on a lot, because as I've gotten older, more people reach out and they're like, I want to pick your brain about your career path, and I'm like, do I have a career path to share? But it is kind of interesting how, when you look back, in retrospect, it does make sense. I mean, I studied anthropology because I was really interested intellectually, and curious about other cultures. I grew up, the kid of Mexican immigrants in Texas, and I had the luck of my parents speaking to me in Spanish, so growing up bilingual and, really bicultural, and then deciding in school to study French because I already spoke Spanish. And so kind of getting another perspective and sort of, learning. I think you learn so much from other cultures, right? And just being curious. And I loved, trying food from different places. And even as a little kid in Texas, there were not a ton of Japanese restaurants or Indian restaurants in, Austin of the 1990s. You might be surprised to learn, but I wanted to go to them. I wanted to try that food and to know more about it. And so yeah, I mean, it's a personal connection and curiosity that I have felt for a long time. But also, I think that the sense of wanting to kind of right what's wrong was also something that I think, when you look across other cultures, you get so much empathy for the human experience, for how much both struggle and challenge and suffering there is around the world, and also how many creative ways there are to address differences and to address, the different challenges that come up. So all of that was what I was kind of grappling with intellectually, I guess. And then why did I move to San Francisco was really because I was jealous of my sister because I was in the Boston area, freezing, after, blizzard after blizzard after blizzard, and going where should I move? Not here, not anywhere near here. And my sister went to UC Santa Cruz. And so it just was she was living a really nice California life. And I thought, I'm gonna try that.
Shout out to the banana slugs.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think my own desire to, experience different things and try different things. So when I first, actually in college, the reason why I moved to the Bay Area was my sister, and then also that I had a fellowship at Hispanics in Philanthropy. They had offices in downtown San Francisco, and they were doing these kind of fellowships for people coming out of college to try to get more Latinas into the world of philanthropy. And that's kind of what brought me here. So through that fellowship, I met Valeria, who was the executive director at the time of La Cocina, and got pulled in. And the reason why I got pulled in is because it was everything I loved, right? All of the different, I love food. I had worked in restaurants. Like I just, cared so much about all the different ways in which people are able to express themselves through the foods that they make. And then also cared really deeply about the fact that opportunity is so, horribly distributed based on really, factors that you can control, what you look like, what color your skin is, your gender, like all of that. And so like that kind of frustration with the status quo and kind of finding this organization that really was addressing all of those things via food, which I love. Yeah, just kind of felt like the stars aligned. But, in retrospect, it makes a lot of sense. But at the moment, I was just kind of like bopping around trying to figure it out.
As long as it makes sense towards the end, right? We're here with Leticia Landa, Executive Director of La Cocina, here on San Francisco Revival. You started in 2008. You have been at La Cocina for 18 years.
Almost, yeah.
Almost 18 years
like
next
in
month.
3 weeks.
Yeah. So you were the third staff, and now you are at well over 20 staff for the organization. How has that journey been to be a part of? How has that growth felt like to you from inside the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that it has been a little chaotic, as any quickly growing organization, I think, can attest to, but I sort of thrive in that. And I think, it's not for everybody, the startup, scrappy world, but I really loved it. I love that my job has changed quite a bit every couple of years. And I mean, sure, maybe the title and the hat I was wearing, but like actually what I was doing. And so that has really kept it interesting. I think it's really nice in the sense of I've never run a food business before or any business, but I get to work with so many incredibly talented entrepreneurs, and it's really like their experience and what they're looking for has shaped La Cocina. So like, people are like, how did you grow La Cocina? I'm like, well, I didn't. I mean, it's a team effort. There are so many different staff members. I mentioned Meredia, who was the first ED. Caleb was ED for 11 years. Like, we have had incredible staff members and also incredible board members, but also all of the entrepreneurs have taught us like what we needed to know in order to figure out how to shape the program. So, we've grown a lot in terms of having like a catering team, having like a, communications team and doing a lot of marketing. That's really a reaction to what the needs of the entrepreneurs were, and really wanting to build the resources that they needed. So in terms of, like how were we growing or why were we growing in the way that we did is really because we wanted to be, the food industry is changing constantly. You're in a really rapidly changing industry. And then you and I were just talking about how quickly and dramatically San Francisco changes, right? And so like, we started in 2008. That was the crash, right? Like that other crash that happened way back when around housing and around access. And so we had such an influx of people, right, who had lost their jobs, lost their homes. We're like, what can I do? I can start a business. I can cook. I can share my food with people. So I just think kind of through like the different tech booms and busts that there have been, there's this sort of constant of this like entrepreneurialism that I think is not just immigrants or not just women, but like this sense of like, I'm gonna change my stars. Like I am gonna create something based on what I can do. That energy that we've just been trying to figure out how to resource over all of those different years and changes.
In those almost 2 decades at La Cocina, what have you learned around or about people in that time? Also kind of about yourself, right? Because 18 years ago, you were, just coming out of university. You've also grown and changed and developed differently over that time.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, the one thing that came right to my mind as you asked it was like resilient.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I have learned really firsthand, like just how incredibly resilient our community is and how you like weather those storms and you adapt to those changes and you find ways of surviving. And I wish that didn't have to be the case, right? Many times, but I do really feel like as a woman, as, someone with an immigrant background, like you're kind of always having to figure out how to take up space and how to, accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, that you can accomplish. And so I think that has been something that really sticks out to me, for myself, but also really for all the incredible people that I've been surrounded by, and to just watch all of the different challenges that people are up against. Like there are so many people, over the course of starting their business who like have a kid, get a divorce, illness, like life throws so much at you, and that ability to desire to, keep going and like keep at it is, I think, really resonant. And then the other thing that I've learned is how slow this work is and how much time it takes and how much of like a counter narrative and like counterculture that is, particularly being in San Francisco, where it's like speed and, break things fast and everything is happening at the speed of light. And all those things are really cool and impressive, like as you sort of think about the technology, but like how many years have they been working on the self-driving taxis to get them to a place where now they're here, right? Like I think often people don't realize how long those tails are, how much time, effort, how many different people it took to create that, right? Or even when I talked about Reem's story, like when someone saw Reem opening here in the spring of 2020, did they know that that was actually already like 4 years worth of somebody working day and night all the time to get to this place? Maybe not. I don't know that effort and that like long time that things take is as evident sometimes, but it just feels to me, like this real realization that I'm having in my 40s maybe of like, wow, like things take a long time, like, and it's hard to be patient. Like patience is not my strong suit, but I've had to find it. And I think it just, things take a lot longer than you think they're going to.
Yeah. And congratulations are in order, because I think some of that effort, some of that patience, and a lot of the success and resilience of the network has been recognized. You've recently won the 2025 Basque Culinary World Prize, also known as the Nobel Prize of Gastronomy, which I had to look this up. The art of selecting, preparing, serving, and enjoying fine food. So you were honored for using gastronomy as a tool for inclusion, dignity, and economic independence, which is not something you necessarily always see as tied up with enjoying fine food, especially the word inclusion. So like, what does that type of recognition mean for you and, probably more importantly, the entire La Cocina network, right? It's not just the local impact or even the Bay Area regional impact, right? Like this is an international body that has seen this model, seen this work, seen the successes, seen the resilience, and have thought it worthy of global highlight.
Yeah. It's really gratifying. And I think that it's just this opportunity, like kind of to what I said around how food is like a means to an end, right? Food businesses, in La Cocina's case, are like a means to this end of like equity, justice, economic opportunity. And when it's very cool that the world of food, the chef world, the kind of fine dining world, can recognize and realize like this is a tool. How can we use this thing that we love, that we're passionate about, and actually ensure that there is like social change happening? So what was the coolest for me is that this is the 10th time they've given the prize out. And so I was lucky in that they invited all of the past winners together. And, the projects that people are working on in different parts of the world, there's a Ghanaian chef, Chef Binta, who's, working on providing like local Fulani dinners and like increasing access for folks, who very rarely get that kind of opportunity for ingredients that, otherwise wouldn't be recognized. A woman in Venezuela who's like reviving the cacao industry, working with like indigenous women and, women growers to really do like heritage cacao, like just incredible projects. And I was like, found myself being like so in awe of just the scope of the social change work that's happening globally through food. And to have La Cocina kind of recognized among those kinds of projects. I mean, I could have kept going. Jose Andres is another winner. I mean, there's so many really, really cool and important projects. It's a really nice recognition that actually who gets to be a business owner matters, and that food businesses as a tool for like community building, connection, matter. And it doesn't just matter here, right? Like it doesn't just matter in San Francisco. It actually really matters everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And how can people look to what we're doing and the model that we've built and the fact that we're really supporting entrepreneurs at the start, and then are kind of proving that that means that they stick around longer than average and that they are able to, have that ripple effect. Like, I hope that it's inspirational kind of on a global scale for people to really think about like that choice between the figurative McDonald's and the local business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that choice is something that any human can make almost anywhere that will have consequences, I think, for the world around them and for the community that they're living in.
Yeah, definitely. Has there been have you heard of any inspirations or any inquiries to La Cocina from other parts of the country or the world who may want to replicate this model?
Yeah, and actually, so La Cocina now officially on our website has a consulting arm. So we have a logo and everything. We formalized it just this last year. So we've done kind of informal consulting for many years of people kind of hearing about us, being like, oh, this is cool, I want to do it, and working with them. And now we've really formalized that, created a consulting program where, we're sharing curriculum, we're sharing best practices, we're doing kind of train the trainers for other organizations. And yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to see. Like, one of the consulting clients that I had many, many years ago was the Kitchen Project in Auckland, New Zealand,
Yeah.
The city of Auckland. Somebody working there had gone to a conference that Caleb presented at and was like, oh, we should do this in our city. And so, we worked with them to start an incubator. They now have 2 kitchens and 2 different community centers in Auckland, and they've started many, many food businesses with so many cool products, a lot more packaged food products, but some restaurants too. And yeah, it's really cool to see. There's the Spice Kitchen Incubator in Salt Lake City. They're working mostly with refugees. A bunch of different models. Stockton, we're, starting to work with the city of Fresno. So yeah, I do think for me, the Basque Culinary World Prize and then also the way that consulting has kind of taken off are like, you can only really do that when you, over time, like to, you have to have something that's working in order to share it. And so it's cool that we're kind of at this stage where like, we're sure that what we have is working, and now how can we really share it and highlight it in bigger ways? Because it's very important, the impact that we're having here, but there are so many people all over the world. And so, how can we really try to increase that impact? And that's the way I think to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And especially because a lot of the folks that you're incubating are from everywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to kind of bring it in and then take it back out, I think is a beautiful process in itself.
Yeah.
Kind of reshifting a little bit to San Francisco and resilience, right? Like, you mentioned it briefly that San Francisco's in, for better or worse, depending on who you ask, an ever-changing city, and depending on what level of the power hierarchy we're on. A city like San Francisco has skyrocketing rents, displacement, inequality. How do these issues, including lack of affordable housing, commercial displacement, how do they, on a general level, impact the entrepreneurs that you're working with, but then also how do they shape the chances of success for everyday people in a field where generally on the private market, maybe without La Cocina support, a lot of places just wouldn't make it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. It's like a depressing question. But
you're pushing back against the tidal wave. Right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's interesting, right? Because La Cocina is here. It's around the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's at the corner. It's between 25th and 26th on Folsom Street. The reason why the kitchen was built in the Mission in the early 2000s is because there were so many people living in the neighborhood who were making food out of their homes and selling it informally. And Now, more often than not, we are getting people who come and who apply that are not living in the Mission. They're living in like the outer East Bay, but they're still interested in coming to San Francisco and starting a food business in San Francisco because this is where there's a market for it. So I do think that like geographically, where our entrepreneurs are located is now much more all over the place. Certainly, we still have some Mission residents who come, and we try to really prioritize providing services. We haven't talked about this at all, but actually we also have a second location now, a kitchen in the Tenderloin neighborhood that we opened as a marketplace initially, but have shifted into being like a second incubator kitchen. And so we're also working with Tenderloin residents to be able to access that kitchen space. But generally, in terms of like where our entrepreneurs living, it's like all over the map and quite a lot in the East Bay. And so I do think that yes, displacement has affected how far people are driving to get to work, whether they're working in a restaurant, and also how far they're driving to get to the restaurants that they own, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is, that's definitely a reality. And I also think that what is cool or important to me, impactful to me about the difference between like working in a food business and owning a food business is the opportunity that gives families to really like create an asset that then like that kind of generational wealth building we're starting to see. So like 13 of the businesses that started out of La Cocina's incubator are now passing kind of from the generation of the person who started it to the next generation. So, maybe those kids are not living around the corner, maybe they're living further away, but like they're owning this business that's here. We've had 3 or 4 people actually, use the growth of the business to be able to buy homes.
Yeah.
Couple in San Francisco, some in the East Bay, but that type of like economic development work that really creates like a business is an asset. It is income, but it's not just income, right? Like that's the difference. It's also the ownership piece that really shifts someone's like economic opportunity, and it shifts it for the whole family. So I think, that's kind of a roundabout answer, but I do feel like what you can do to push against those forces is like provide people with access to ways of making money so that they can be here to take advantage. There is so much money in this city, right? Like there's so much money in terms of tech. There's so much money in terms of, I think about like corporate catering. There's like other cities could only dream of the number of
conferences,
right, et cetera, but we've got to be able to equip people to take advantage of those things. And so that is kind of like the push and the challenge and the opportunity of being in San Francisco specifically.
Yeah, definitely. I think the economic opportunity piece is a huge fundamental, like, you mentioned asset, right? Like, but I also think beyond that, it's like there's a identity tether that a business in a neighborhood does for a family for multiple generations, particularly immigrant families who otherwise, it's hard to find a tether in America. It's hard to find a tether in San Francisco, right? Like, my family came from India to the Tenderloin, actually, right? And like I have my identity tether to the TL, but I don't live there anymore. We don't have a business in the TL. Because then once you're out, you can go back. Well, you reminisce, right? You have memories.
Yeah.
But like this thing that can bring you back to, this is my family's origin story in the States, right? Like it's an incredible thing to have if you can have it. And interesting, you were talking about the incubator and the TL. I was reading up about the marketplace previously. I think it started in 2019,
We were about to open in 2020.
It's because, it's in doing a lot of the, like, some of the research and thinking around this interview, right? It's hard for me not to think about my own mom, right? Who, my wife is trying really hard to get my mom to sell at a farmer's market. She makes a lot of good food. She makes something that's easily packageable, etc. But like just imagining, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago at this point, us being in the TL and then just thinking what life could have been if that opportunity was there, right? Because, especially for a lot of like immigrant women in general, bringing food traditions from that you're not going to find in restaurants, right? Like my mom's food doesn't exist in any Indian restaurant in San Francisco, right? Because it's just not there. It's not the same food,
Yeah.
right? And to have like, here's an opportunity where on the one hand you can showcase what you're bringing from different parts of the world, micro parts of the world, to build an economic foundation on that, right? And then to have that, hopefully shape part of what your neighborhood is, what your community is, right? Like it's, I can think about it for a long time, and then just to see how you all are doing it and making a lot of that a reality is definitely, we think is necessary as a way of, I don't want to say reshaping San Francisco, but like shaping San Francisco, right? Like there are a lot of parts of this city because of capital, lack of capital, that end up being malleable. This you can actually dry the concrete, right? And be like, this is our business. This is our, concrete foundation in this space, in this city. It's our mark in this city. So this is where my mind goes with a lot of this stuff.
Totally. And I mean, it's not just for the owner, but it's like for all of the customers, right? Like we all, I think, have memories tied to the restaurants where we had our birthdays when we were little, or where, like where we stopped by on our way to work to get our cup of coffee, and like that sense of connectedness to a place. I think it's really easy to take for granted, but like, the pandemic really, I think, brought it to the forefront for a lot of people in terms of like the loss of those spaces. But, we have to really be making an effort, I think, almost constantly in order to make sure that remains a really important part of our communities. And in the same way that, like building affordable housing creates spaces for workers and families to stay in the center part of a city that, capitalism wouldn't necessarily do on its own. The creation of...
Doesn't do on its own,
as we've learned. The creation of, independently owned small businesses and the support kind of required for that. Like, I don't know. I mean, you think of lots of other places that aren't San Francisco and they don't look like this, right? Like there's a whole lot of chains and that's kind of it. And so how do you really maintain that like cultural heritage, that access to those spaces? It's got to be like intentional investment. It's not just going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's like some parallels there for both things. And for families, how meaningful it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, right? And it's like in order to get to that place, there has to be some, like it has to go beyond like energy or vibe, but something in the infrastructure that can connect decision makers, people in positions of power, to the deeper layers that exist in all these communities, right? You don't see it in a lot of places because people don't look. Right? If you don't look and you don't support it, you don't put capital behind it, you don't put time, effort, right? This is not just like city governments, right? But also, foundations that give a lot of money to those programs. You have to know the pavement, right? In order to impact it in a way that isn't just putting McDonald's in a bunch of places or Michael's, Hobby Lobbies, or whatever, right? Like all these different places. So San Francisco, kind of sticking with that just for a little bit, is a city that kind of simultaneously celebrates culinary innovation while at the same time, as we've talked about, displaces many of the communities who create that food. As someone who's here, whose business is here, who's been here for 2 decades, like how do you make sense of that tension of the place you live, the direction that power seems to want it to go, and where we want it to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's interesting because I actually feel like what matters for a business's survival is its customer base. And so in that sense, like, government can say support small businesses or put, posters up, but it's the people who have to make that happen. It's actually like a behavioral thing that allows for small businesses to be successful or not successful. So I do think that it's kind of this nicely like democratic process in the sense that like it's individual people who are going to make it happen. And certainly there are policies that can facilitate that, right? There are so many different barriers that small businesses generally face, whether it be permitting or, like lease structure. And, there are levers, right? Like there are people in power who can adjust those things and make it easier or harder. But then ultimately the business still has to sell food. So it is kind of like balanced in that way because of the types of products that the business is selling. It's like a public facing industry. So I do think it's like a yes and. Like certainly there are things that I think the city government can and should do. And I, sit on a lot of different committees and, have done a lot of like listening sessions around what are the changes that we want to see, the improvements that we want to see. And it's like really dependent on like the populace, to actually make that real.
Yeah. What are the future plans for La Cocina in terms of new programs, expansion, advocacy, community projects?
Yeah, well, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary. And what was nice about it was that it was kind of a way to like almost reset and reroute after the pandemic, which was so, it was difficult for anyone in any industry, obviously for like the health industry, et cetera. But for the food industry, there was so much disruption. And so it just, again, to things taking longer than you think, I really feel like until this last year, like, that was the first year we brought our gala back. We brought the street food festival back. Like we kind of are like, okay, all these things that we used to do that we knew were really good for the businesses that we had to stop doing, we can do them again. And we can really do them having learned all those lessons and bringing them back in a way that we know will really like ground, in what's right for the entrepreneurs and in what their needs are as the industry has shifted a lot. So, some of what's new is old, but it's just an ability to do it again, right? And that's important. And then consulting. So like formal consulting is kind of the biggest sort of new thing that I think really has this opportunity to really take off in the sense of really wanting to equip other organizations, other cities with the tools to support the food business owners in their area to be able to run, successful businesses, have a greater shot at success. So that feels really important to me. And then I think that like the innovation is constant. The learning curve is constant because the food industry is constantly changing. And so we want to, we're always like, we're rolling out a new incubation curriculum. We're doing new workshops. We're, working with partners to figure out, like we're doing this cohort on like how to equip ourselves and then the businesses we're working with to be able to take advantage of AI. There's so many different ways in which we're constantly trying to figure out like what's out there and how do we equip our community of entrepreneurs with that knowledge so that they can continue to be successful. That's kind of what's new, I would say. And then, running 2 kitchens is a lot. And so, continuing to move people through the program. We want to do more and more events. We want to be able to, the space in the Tenderloin is beautiful. People have done parties there. They've done big dinners there. Really using the assets that we have in our physical spaces to be able to serve community feels exciting. And then continuing to push on sales opportunities. So like La Cocina brokered catering, we've been growing and doing a lot more of. And that's, something that we want to continue to really stay focused on because, all of those sales are for the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, definitely. You're listening to San Francisco Revival. We are here with Leticia Landa, Executive Director of La Cocina. So we talked a lot about other people making food, other people's skills in the kitchen. Leticia, I have a question for you. How are you in the kitchen? Are you handy with the knife? Are you strict on this is the recipe I will meticulously follow? Do you measure with your heart?
Such good questions. Such good questions. I love cooking. I would say like as somebody who loves baking, I like a recipe. I like following a recipe and, knowing kind of how it's going to shake out. It's definitely appeals to how my
I feel like
brain
the recipe
works.
is probably a little bit more important on the baking side
Certainly.
than on the cooking side. You won't put too much baking powder or
Totally. You
anything.
can't wing that. Yeah. Yeah. So I really love baking. And I mean, I love cooking for my family, for my kids. I think relative to the vast majority of the staff at La Cocina, I probably am in the kitchen least, but I do really love it. And it's something that it's a way that I kind of relax and that, it brings me a lot of joy to be in the kitchen for sure.
What's your go-to baked good?
To where?
Your go-to baked good.
Oh, my go-to baked good. Oof. That I made or that someone else made for me?
No, that you make.
Brownies.
Brownies.
Mostly because I just love eating them. I love baking them.
What kind of brownies? Are we talking with walnuts? Are we talking
I'm pretty simple.
peanut butter chocolate?
Just like
brownies?
a regular old school
chocolate brownie?
Chocolate brownie.
Double
with
chocolate?
Like a crackly top.
Okay.
Fudgy. Yeah.
Nice.
That's my go-to.
I had a very good chocolate halva brownie this morning.
Yum.
It was very good.
I'm
not
go for
gonna
a
lie.
gourmet brownie out in the world.
Yeah.
It's just not usually what I'm making at home.
Yeah, I'm not a baker at all. I'm definitely a measure with your heart kind of person.
A little bit different every time.
Yeah, it is a little bit different every time. But that's just my vibe. I love it.
Yeah.
You have any spicy takes about the food world? Spicy, sweet, savory?
Yeah, well, when you said that, I thought about how at La Cocina, we have such an awesome staff, and there's like a couple of people who hate spice. And so whenever we get catering or if we're out at a restaurant where it's like, oh, like this is for this person and like make sure that they know not to eat this. And, I just think it's like so much of how you show you care, right, about others. And yeah, like I love being able to like prepare something in a way that I think someone else will enjoy or like, order at a restaurant. Like I'm often the default person who's ordering if it's like a big group meal and really thinking about, who's going to want what. Like I do think it's like a cool opportunity to like understand what someone's tastes are and then be able to, give them something that they're going to love.
That is a great answer, but not to my question. We are looking for controversial food takes.
I don't have any good gossip for you. I wish I did.
What's one cuisine you will never eat? And I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that.
I have individual ingredients. I love chocolate covered crickets. I would eat those. Yeah. There's not much I wouldn't eat.
We almost got that from you all because one of your businesses, they sell those. Yeah.
They do, and they're delicious.
This is going to be... Well, I can say it, I guess. I vetoed that partially because I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat the crickets, one. And I wanted to enjoy what we got. And we traded it in for some Vietnamese corn snacks, and those are amazing.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah. I think for meat eaters who are trying to be more conscious about their environmental impact, insects are a really good way to do that.
I have heard, especially for protein intake and also with food systems and how they are. So,
but I would see as a vegetarian how that would not be, wouldn't really work.
Shout out to all the meat eaters out there. Get ready.
Try the crickets.
Try.
Be open-minded.
Otherwise, you're going to have a choice. With the way things are going, give her a couple decades.
I know.
I mean, that is a very bleak future we're headed to, but let's detour from that and talk a little bit about Texas.
Yes. I was just there.
I'll stay away from the bleak parts of Texas. So you mentioned you're from Texas. You're from Austin. How do you really feel about Tex-Mex?
I miss it dearly. I really do. And it's funny to say that because San Francisco is a city that has almost everything. It does not have good queso. It just doesn't. And yeah, it's like a childhood taste that I really miss and crave. And when I go home, I have it. And then, there's other things too. Like the barbecue is like very particular. I've come around to California barbecue. There's some really wonderful places here, but it's different,
Yeah, of course. There's like 24 hours smoking of brisket and all that, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to lie. I've been to a couple of those places. I've never been able to eat anything there because I used to eat meat, but not so much anymore. But dang, does it smell good?
Queso's vegetarian.
Does it? Yeah.
It's horrible for you.
Queso we can make. Well, interestingly, I was vegan for about 15 years. And the biggest thing I missed was cheese.
Yeah.
And in the past year or so, I started reintroducing cheese into my diet. And by that, I mean, I just been going ham on cheese not ham on cheese, but ham on cheese. Yeah, for the past year.
Is Velveeta really cheese? I mean, I'm sure it's not.
I haven't had Velveeta in a long time, but
that's what the real queso is made of,
Velveeta in chimichangas. There was, I don't know, Indian people make some interesting food sometimes, and the first chimichanga I had was made by an Indian person with Velveeta cheese. Bomb. So good.
I can only imagine. I mean,
so
I think that's what's so cool about like immigrant cuisines, right? Like Tex-Mex is that, I mean, Texas was Mexico, but also it was like how Mexican food was influenced by like European food and by things like wheat and by, like meat and cows. And like there's just like there's such richness even to something as silly as queso or a chimichanga. But like I'm fascinated, and I do really feel like there's something so interesting about that fusion or like those new dishes that arise that people, kind of invent. Or like there's, a ramen with like a slice of American cheese, like instant ramen, right? Like a Texan could have figured that out too, because there's just this love of like orange cheese products. So I just think, that there's something really cool and creative about the like immigration / diaspora / industrialized food products that I think is super fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to have part 2.
Yes.
At Chewy's.
Hey.
In Texas.
That big basket of Tostito type chips that come, at the beginning.
Yeah. The salsas could be spicier though.
Yeah, it's
in my opinion. Their churros are pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I had my first churro at Chewy's in Houston. I have a lot of family in Texas, so that's how I even know about these things. Shout out to any family in Texas that might be watching this podcast or listening. You can find us on all our platforms. And as the sun is here blocking your eyes, it is perfect time to say thank you so much for giving us your time, for helping us set up this interview at Reem's in this beautiful location. If you are anywhere in the Bay Area, this is 1 block away from the 24th Street BART station. Come through. Food is amazing. The atmosphere is amazing. The murals on the wall, which you can't see in our shot, but maybe we'll get on a picture, is amazing. The story is, and please support all the work that's being done by these entrepreneurs and by La Cocina. Thank you so much, Leticia. Thank you for listening to San Francisco Revival. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share all across your networks, and check out our YouTube page, Apple Podcasts for all past episodes of San Francisco Revival. And if you really want to go back, you can go all the way back to season 1 when we were called San Francisco Influx. And with that, I hope you're enjoying a great dinner tonight. And if you're looking to order out, go on La Cocina's website and maybe you can find a restaurant near you.
There are so many incredible options. We have a support our businesses page where you can see all the different businesses that are around the Bay Area, not just in San Francisco, but in Oakland, down in Palo Alto, up in Marin, graduate businesses from our incubator program that are just like absolutely delicious food and really worth visiting.
Shout out to a great meal.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.